my name is Coco Mexico and welcome to White Wine Talks. If you don't know who I am, my stage name is Coco Mexico, and I use that name to make myself feel more comfortable talking on the internet with you. I'm a first generation Mexican artist and that's how I got my name. All right, so let's get into the good stuff. I, like everybody else on this planet, have watched Challengers, except for my family apparently, because I wanted to yap about Challengers so bad, and none of my family members have seen Challengers. I'm feeling the need to connect, okay? I want to yap about how much I enjoyed this film. Today, I was a little bit woefully unprepared because I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't expecting to like Challengers as much as I did. I watched it in theaters on Monday, and today I spent all day reading the script so that I could remember what happened, and I wrote very detailed notes. Side note, if you haven't read the script, it is more graphic, I'll tell you that. It's got a lot more context, I'll tell you that. It's got some words that have been used a little bit too often, I will tell you that. Like the word stroke, I felt like I was reading a really bad fan fiction, and that's not what you want. It's not what you want, but it was entertaining nonetheless. So, are you guys ready to talk about Challengers? Because I know I am. Before we get this thing started, I want everyone to know that there are spoilers ahead. I'm going to share the whole entire movie with you all. If you haven't watched the movie, I highly recommend that you should, because it is amazing. Who else has never wanted two boyfriends before? This is your final warning. There are spoilers ahead. I'm gonna pour myself a glass of wine. If you can tell, this is fake. This is just for dramatic effect. Also, my outfit is inspired by Zendaya and tennis. I went to the School of Cuntology with Zendaya. I came back, you know, I made a C-, but I tried, and here I am with my little outfit. The first thing that struck me when the movie started is it was kind of boring, okay? So they start off with like set one, tennis match, and they're just hitting the ball, and I was like, as a tennis fan, blah, you know, whatever. There are a few things that are noticeable in the first few scenes. So we've got Phil's tire down, okay? Yeah, very big indicator that it's not a very big match, you know, not as important as most matches, but at the same time, I don't know that much about tennis, so it was just like a thing I inferred. We see a lot of noticeable eye contact between Tashi and the boys, and I, as the viewer watching this, was like, what's going on? Because keep in mind, I had no clue what was gonna happen. No earthly idea what was gonna happen. I knew that there was a little throuple situation, but I didn't know who with, you know? I mean, I guess I did see the promo, so I could have assumed, but I'm not that smart. I never claimed to be that smart. So we get a flashback to the hotel room a week prior, and I noticed Tashi and Art are together, and I was like, huh, interesting. So are they, I was still under the impression it was a throuple situation. I was waiting for Patrick to walk in. Okay, I was like, where's Patrick? Turns out they're married. Right before the match, we get Tashi talking to Art. She says to decimate that bitch. You catch my drift? And I was like, okay. She majored in cuntology. Art loses the match that he goes into. This one's not against Patrick yet. The dialogue between Tashi and Art is really one-sided. You can tell that there's some resentment on her end because she mentions that he was able to recover and she wasn't. It's also very clear that Art is soy boy, you know, like he's such a simp for her. She literally spits venom in his face every single time she speaks, and he's just like, okay, okay, queen. Okay, Tashi, I'll do what you say. So we don't really know the backstory as to why she wasn't able to recover. She said that she would literally stab someone to have the recovery that Art had. She was like, even like a small child, like I was like, girl. Their daughter comes in at this point, and they're at the hotel room, and she's like, you're always talking about tennis. So I thought that was very interesting that even her daughter recognizes the fact that her parents only talk about tennis. We don't know much about these characters at this point, but that is kind of telling that something is off in their dynamic, and the only thing that they can talk about is tennis. It was at this point, after Art, he failed at his match, and Tashi decides to sign him up for a challenger. I don't know much about tennis. All I do know is that it is lower status. It is a lowbrow thing, and somehow a challenger is not as good as whatever he was doing. Here we go. Phil's Tire Town. He needs to get his oomph back. Also, in this exchange, Art says, "I love you," to his wife, Tashi, and all she says back is, "I know." Now, I'm trying to put myself in Art's shoes, and if it was Zendaya, maybe I would take that. That's mean. If my significant other, if my partner said, "I know," and didn't say it back, I'd be mad. I'd be livid. Art, ever the soy boy, is just like, okay. It's at this point that we switch from the beautiful hotel room that Tashi and Art are staying in to Highway Hotel lobby. Think grimy. I mean, not that grimy. It's where us peasants go when we need to stay somewhere for the night. Patrick is groveling with the front desk lady. He's just like, "Please, like, let me in, baby." Like clearly trying to flirt with her to get her to do his bidding. He's using his sexuality as a way to manipulate her into doing what he wants. He's getting all up in her face, and he's like, "Please, like, you don't even know how much this racket is worth. Like, I'll like sign it for you, and like maybe like we could work something out." And she's just like, "No, I need a card on file." And he tries good 2 or 3 times to continue to flirt with this desk lady. And she's like, "Absolutely not." And so he storms off, and it's quite embarrassing to watch. As somebody who feels secondhand embarrassment very strongly, I didn't like that. That was bad. Ew. But I guess it garnered the effect that it needed to. He ends up sleeping in his car at Phil's Tire Town. And why did he park sideways? Patrick, some decorum, please. He ends up getting woken up by one of the attendants in the morning, and he has to explain, like, he's a tennis player, he's supposed to be there for a reason. They kind of let him by, but they say that he's really early for check-in. He goes in, he talks to the officiant, and she has what can I only describe as the best Dunkin' ad I've ever seen before. That bagel looks scrumdiddlyumptious. I'm looking to buy one, okay? I know they don't look like that in real life, but that one looked great. The official, she says that she was a line judge back in 06. Ooh, foreshadow, foreshadow. Patrick attempts to get the prize money straight up to see if there's any way that he can get in advance, because he knows that even if he loses, he still gets $400. And the official says, well, she suggests to him that he could just lose on purpose and then get $400. But if he stays in, he gets a prize of a little over $7,000, I'm pretty sure. You can tell that Patrick's really weighing his options here because he doesn't have any money. He's like going back and forth. But the official tells him that there is a last-minute wild card, and she gestures that it is Art. And suddenly, that's made up Patrick's mind on what he's gonna do. He's gonna stay, and he's gonna slay, and he's gonna try and win the match. Now we're going to present day. Side note, there was a lot of jumping around. I'm not very good at following things, so it was kind of tough. I get why they did it the way that they did, but I have the brain of a squirrel. Art curses, which is a warning penalty. He attempts to smash his racket, but he doesn't because he can't afford to have another penalty and lose a point, and is mad that Patrick has the upper hand. So it's clear that it's not just about Tashi anymore. There was something between those two, and it's personal. Now we flash back to 2006. 15 years ago. The tweener was the winning point in the Junior US Open. So that means that Patrick hit the shot, the winning shot, in between his legs. So it's very clear that Patrick is a very gifted tennis player. Better than Art. The boys are elated with their win. They literally start kissing each other. They fall to the court. He's got his legs up. It's seeming very sensual from my perspective. I don't know if I'm putting my friend on the ground like that, but apparently that's how Patrick gets down. We know who's bottom. Their chemistry is palpable. And then they kiss each other through their trophies, which I feel like is very clever how they use tennis as a metaphor for sex. Please, kissing each other through the trophies. Please, I had my feet kicking in the seats. Oh my gosh, a little schoolgirl giggle came from my body when I saw this. I was like, so please. Okay, and this is the first comment where they say that they're fire and ice, and they have a little discussion about that, but it's clear that Patrick is fire and Art is ice. Patrick is fire because he's a lot more passionate, a lot more instinctual. Art is a lot more cold and calculating. He plays his game beautifully, but nonetheless, he still is very methodical in the way that he chooses to play his game of tennis. we see the first manipulative move from Art that shows that he's ice. He basically is trying to get Patrick to forfeit the game by saying that his grandmother is dying, which is not great. And honestly, Patrick at that point in time is like, sure, like I'll let you win, because Art knows that Patrick is a better player than him. But at the same time, Patrick, you can tell, has feelings for Art and is willing to do whatever to make him happy, so it doesn't really matter if he throws him the game. It doesn't matter to him that much because he cares about Art more. After this, they go to watch Tashi play her game, and Patrick is the one who says that Tashi is the most beautiful woman that he's ever seen. So from this interaction, it's clear that Art doesn't really know who Tashi Duncan is, but once he sees her, he's enthralled. The way that these men were drooling over Tashi's character, insane. In the stands, I love the way that they filmed it. They like lean in because they're so interested. She wins, she yells, "Come on!" Patrick puts his hand on Art's thigh. I don't know about you. I mean, I don't watch sports with my friends, but I don't know. I'm putting my hand on my friend's thigh. I don't know. My best friend, maybe. But you know the trope, best friends, they might kiss. Later at the party, they introduce themselves. Tashi knows them both already. The chemistry and the throuble is really obvious in this scene. But now, at this point in the movie, I'm not sure if they're interested in Tashi and they're fighting for her attention, or they're fighting for each other's attention. It's very unclear. Maybe it's a little bit of both. And then at this point, they have a quick little ciggy on the beach. Art and Patrick are the ones that are smoking. Tashi makes it very clear that she does not want to smoke. They kind of have a heated discussion because Patrick is really shocked that Tashi doesn't want to immediately go pro, but is going to go to Stanford like Art is going to go to Stanford. Tashi makes it clear that she doesn't want her only skill to be hitting a ball with a racket, and that she wants to have something more to her and her life. And Patrick is like, okay, I understand. It's clear from the scene that Patrick and Tashi are very evenly matched. They both speak with aggression to one another, and Tashi is even commenting on how short-sighted Patrick is, even though this is the first time that she's met him in person. At the end of this interaction, Patrick and Art both ask for her number, and oh my gosh, if two handsome, athletic young men wanted my number, I would not play it as cool as Tashi Duncan did. I'm gonna tell you that. I'm gonna tell you that right now. She says, I am not a homewrecker. Please, girl, please. I think it's honestly, okay, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just my experience, but I used to want two boyfriends so bad. And I remember all of my friends who called me weird for wanting to have two boyfriends. Why would you want two boyfriends? Yes, I want them to kiss. Okay. Like, they might kiss. Yes. But I remember y'all who made fun of me, and look at you all now. Talking about how you wish you had two boyfriends like Zendaya did. Please, I keep that in my memory bank. Anyway, Patrick says we don't live together, and that gets a look from Art. It's a whole thing. You can tell between those two, there's a little... She ends up going back to their hotel room. This is the scene. Now, I want to note that I was the only person in the theater that was laughing when they talk about their little solo play when they were 12 or 13. I can't remember the number because it's not in the script. That was hilarious because it was so awkward and I loved every single moment of it. As you can tell, Art is so uncomfortable. He's like, no, no, no. And Patrick's like, whoa. He literally looks down at the floor while Patrick is telling the story. And Tashi's eating up. She's like, nom, nom, nom. He's yapping. I get it. I'm an overchair. I know, Patrick, please. She's like, that's cute. And I literally said the same exact thing. Like, before they were done with the conversation, I was like, that's really cute. Like, out loud in the theater because the acting was so great. It felt real. But anyway, she ends up getting on the bed. They sit next to her. She ends up kissing Art first, which I was like, because even though Patrick got on the bed first, she kissed Art first. And then she kissed Patrick. And then they start kissing her neck. And at this point, I'm in the theater like, I feel like this is something I should not see. I feel like I need to look away. This is not for my eyes. But I don't, obviously. She keeps on trying to push their heads together to get them to kiss because they're both trying to kiss her face. And then finally, they look like they're munching on her. They kiss. And they are hardcore. My eyes. That is the gay agenda. I loved it. It was great. I was elated. I was watching that screen and I was like, Zendaya, show me your ways. Tashi Duncan, show me your ways. I want 2 boyfriends so bad. So bad. And then she gives this little super villain look to them. She's like, iconic. Iconic. Okay? She's just sitting back, watching those boys go at it. She gets up. She's like, okay, bye. Good luck at your match. Whoever wins gets my number. Art is really nervous because he knows that Patrick is better than him at tennis. So he was like, if you wanted him to win, like, just say that. She's like, I think you can beat him. Like, you should beat him, actually. And so it's kind of putting them against each other because now the boys don't know which one she actually wants. She makes it very ambiguous. At this point, we go back to present day. What I really liked about this movie was that the flashbacks actually correlated to how well the players were doing in the game. So it's reflected now that Patrick is winning. He wins the match. Earlier in that day, we see that Patrick, his bank account only has $70, which is kind of interesting because they made a comment at the party that Patrick's house is bigger than the one where the party was hosted at. And if you saw the house, it was huge. Patrick has a lot of money. Well, it's not very clear. I mean, I guess you could miss it. It seems like Patrick has a lot of money, but he is not comfortable with sharing that he has a lot of money. He's in the locker room looking at all the guys, swiping on Tinder to find a place to stay for the night. He's swiping on boys and girls. Now, that's our first confirmation. Like, okay, Patrick is a little fruity. So he ends up finding a date, and he's on this date in the hotel lobby a few days before the match. He ends up seeing Tashi and completely ghosts his date. So Patrick goes to talk to her and she's really angry that he had the gall to talk to her in the first place. Tashi says that Art can't see them together because she already thinks that she's planned the whole Phil's Tiger Town thing to humiliate him in the first place. And Patrick says, but didn't you? And she said, not this part. So it's very clear that these two characters, they get each other. Their brains, or Tashi sees his date, makes a comment about it, and Patrick has to confess that the only reason that he's on this date with this girl is because he needs a place to stay. After he figured out that Art was gonna be the one that he was gonna play against, he knew that he needed to have a good night's sleep because he knew that he needed to beat that man into submission. Also, I just thought it was really funny. This line gave very much Sexless Innkeeper. If you have seen How I Met Your Mother, you know what I'm talking about. But I feel like Patrick would put out. He would commit to the bit. After this exchange, we go back 15 years ago. Patrick wins, and instead of telling Art that he hooked up with Tashi, he does not feel comfortable verbalizing it to Art, so they come to an agreement that he will serve like Art if he did sleep with Tashi, and that will be the signal that tells him what he needs to know, because he won't actually be telling him that. And then Patrick makes the serve like Art. So it's clear that they did hook up. We go back to present day. They're sitting on the bench looking at each other. And it seems like Patrick is trying to make good spirits about it and like tries to extend his hand. And Art's completely over it. He's like, little grimace, little, I don't like you. Clear that Art has unresolved feelings about Patrick. But Patrick is just so confident. I love this man's confidence. He knows that he's a POS and just does not care. Respect. We go to 14 years ago at Stanford, and now Tashi and Art are going to the same school. Tashi is either doing a match or she's doing practice, something. Art ends up being there. He invites her to go to the dining hall where Art drops his second manipulative act. He plants a little seed in her mind. He says that he doesn't think that Patrick is in love with her. She has a very heated exchange with Art after this, and she's like, who said that I need somebody to love me? Who said I love him? And it was a whole thing. At the end of this exchange, Art goes, he doesn't love you like I do. Little soy boy, please, please. And she ends up storming off. And Patrick, he comes to Stanford, but he does not surprise Tashi first. No. That's not on the first of his to-do list, okay? He goes to Patrick's practice, cheers him on, then when Art wins, he chases him around the court. If that isn't flirting, I don't know what is. And then after that, they go to the dining hall and they get churros. I know that the churro scene is a fan favorite. There are many things to discuss about the churro scene. First of all, the fact that it was unscripted, magnifique. The fact that Josh O'Connor, who plays Patrick, takes his little foot and pulls the stool closer. Hot, please. They talk. When he grabbed him and they changed the camera angle, oh, I thought they were gonna kiss. Art says that he doesn't get the feeling that Tashi thinks it's as serious of a relationship as Patrick does. Patrick calls him out because Patrick is real and he says, "You little snake, I know what you're doing." Patrick says, "It's exciting to see you lit up about something, even if that something's my girlfriend." Okay. He said that it makes it hotter to him when he's with Tashi to think about the fact that Art is pining over his girlfriend. Two best friends in a room, they might kiss. Okay. He also says, and I knew when I was watching the movie that this was going to be important later, but he says that Art is playing percentage tennis and that he's just waiting for him to mess up. Later, Patrick finally goes to see his girlfriend Tashi. They're in the bed together. It looks like they're about to hook up, or maybe they just had hooked up, but they're in the bed together. And they have a huge blowout argument over Art. Slimy little Art. I love him though. He's so baby boy. When they're having their argument, Tashi says, "You're not threatened by him?" Patrick says, "No." Tashi says, "You should be. He's good looking, he's smart, and he's good at tennis." She also says, "You think the match is over before you've won." And now, I'm sure, and Patrick does say this, "I thought I won your number a long time ago. Why are we still doing this?" Patrick stands up for himself. He does not let that girl talk to him like that. He's like, "I'm your boyfriend. Like, I'm not your fangirl. I'm not your groupie. You and I are peers. And I'm not going to be at your match because you talk to me like that." Fair. I get Patrick. Patrick makes sense to me. Later in the day, Art is waiting in the stands for Patrick. Then he texts Patrick. Patrick texts back and he says, "I'm not going. We had a huge fight." At this point in the match, you can tell that Tashi is trying to get out all of her anger from having the argument with Patrick earlier, feverishly going after the ball, and she ends up snapping her knee, and this is where the injury takes place. Later in the day, Patrick finds them in the infirmary, and he's yelled at by Tashi to leave, and he's like, "Wait, like, listen to me." And then this is the first time that we hear Art raise his voice. He drops the nice act, and he's like, "Get out." And then at this point, Patrick's like, "Okay," and leaves, playing percentage tennis, waiting for him to mess up. We jump back to present day where Patrick gets a verbal violation. So I guess as an onlooker, you're hearing both of these men have shouted obscenities at each other. They're probably like, maybe they just really like tennis and that's why they're yelling at each other. We get a flashback again to Tashi and Art, and they're practicing a few months after her injury. She's trying to see if she'll ever recover, and she's trying to get Art to actually play tennis with her and not treat her like she's injured, to see if she has the capability to play tennis at a professional level. She's literally manhandling this man. I would be scared. She's mad at him because he's not trying hard enough to play against her. But as soon as he actually plays full force with her, her knee gives out, but it's clear that she's not going to be able to play pro tennis anymore after this. We kind of fast forward a few years, but not all the way to present day. And this is where Art asks Tashi to be his coach in the Applebee's. Another great advertisement. They make it very clear that it's Applebee's. And then they have a whole entire discussion about it. He says, "Before you got injured, I used to beat myself up every day for not winning that match against Patrick." She says, "I really was a home record, huh?" Because he mentions that they're no longer speaking to each other. She also says, "You never told me how you felt about me. Do you love me? Are you in love with me?" He says, "Who wouldn't be?" I love him. I love him. They end up kissing outside. And in the script, it goes a lot further than that, baby. Fast forward to present day where Patrick ends up smashing his racket, which is bad, and he gets a penalty. And then we go to set break. Now we're a few days before the match. See, there's a lot of jumping around. Tashi and Patrick go outside for a cigarette, and Patrick asks her to be his coach, and she gives what I can only describe as the greatest stink eye of all time. She ends up slapping him across the face so hard that it knocks a cigarette out of his mouth for even asking for her to be his coach. She tells him to off himself and quit. Girl boss, gatekeep, gaslight. Patrick, he psychoanalyzes her, and it's clear that she hates Art. So he says that she hates Art, and you can tell that he's right. She hates him because she can't live through him anymore if he quits. If he quits tennis, then she doesn't have a connection to tennis anymore. We get the line, "You think he's just a racket," and he's like, "Well, yeah." Patrick ends up giving Tashi his number. She changes her mind, and instead of immediately throwing it away when she walks away, she puts it in her pocket. So now we end up going 8 years prior. Tashi and Patrick sleep together, And there's a possibility that Lily is their child. So we're at the day before the sauna scene, and Art drops the nice guy act and completely obliterates Patrick in the meantime. It was kind of uncalled for. That's kind of mean. You could tell, like, why are you getting that mad, bro, if it doesn't mean that much to you, bro? Okay. Art says to Patrick, I'm just stopping by, man. This is where you live. He also says, I don't miss playing with you. I'm too old. Ruthless! But even through all of that, there's chemistry. Also, I do think it's important to note that I think that Patrick is using his sexuality against Art because it seems like Art has a lot of internalized homophobia, and Patrick knows that by being naked in front of Art that's gonna make him feel more vulnerable, but he ends up leaving. Later that night, Art and Tashi are in the hotel room, and he says, tell me it doesn't matter if I win tomorrow. He's like, how are you gonna look at me if I don't win? And she said like this. And she also says that if he doesn't win, she's gonna leave him. So I feel so bad for him. Like, that's horrible. Like, he's trying his best. Like, he's tired. He's literally, and at this point in the movie, he's like an extremely accomplished tennis player. He has won all of the things except for this like one last thing, like the US Open or whatever. So like, he has a really established career. He's extremely successful in tennis. So for her to just like want this one last thing out of him, it begs the question, what happens after that? Even if he gets this title, I don't think that Tashi Duncan is gonna be able to rest. She's addicted to winning, she's addicted to tennis. Even if he won, I don't see her moving forward with him. It's at this point that Art confesses that he wants to retire this year, but he's willing to give it his all for her because he knows how much Tashi is invested in tennis. But it's a callback to the conversation that her and Patrick had earlier, because Patrick predicted that that was what was gonna happen. She basically has an argument with him and she's like, you're a grown man, like you can pick whatever way you want to go. Like if you don't want to play tennis anymore, then don't tell me, you can do what you want. But it's clear what she wants him to do. At this point, we get one of the saddest scenes in the movie, and I really truly do feel bad for Art. He's like, please just like hold me until I go to sleep. Once Art is asleep, Tashi leaves the room and she immediately texts Patrick and he's like, I'll be there soon, baby. You can tell that there's a huge storm happening. Once Tashi gets in the car, he starts driving. They have a really heated exchange. Tashi tells him to throw in the game. She thinks that if he wins the match against Patrick, that'll give him the confidence he needs to be able to win the US Open. Patrick says, I know you just want to sleep with me. And she's like, no, like you're so full of yourself. They're outside of the car and she spits in his face. Like that's how heated this argument gets. And then immediately after that, they have sex. He drops her off at the hotel. She walks in. She sees that her beautiful husband, Art, is sleeping with their daughter. We flash back to present day where Art is standing there waiting for Patrick to serve. Patrick takes a really long time to serve, and you can tell that he's grappling with how he's gonna serve because he wants to tell Art what happened the night before. He decides to serve like Art. When I tell you I was gagged, my jaw was on the floor. Immediately, Art sees that. He looks at his wife, he looks at Patrick looks at her, nods, and then he says, F-U-C-K, off. Art gets another penalty for using obscenities. That's when they're like, game on. It gave both of them what they needed to be good tennis players. They both got the boost that they needed, and we're getting flung around that court, baby. CGI the ball. It's so entertaining. And honestly, the score like really adds. I don't even like techno music, but at that point in time, I'm like, yeah, like I felt like I was in the club. It looks like Art gets up and he's going over the net, and then Patrick is like looking at him and they're looking at each other. The movie ends in an embrace of the two hugging. It's really unclear who won. Tashi from earlier, she says, come on! And that's the end of the movie. I think she was just excited that she got good tennis. Like it didn't matter who won. I'm gonna be honest, even though I did not like Patrick, my favorite character in this whole entire movie was Art, for sure. I wanted Patrick to win because he didn't have any money. I wanted him to win so bad because Art and Tashi had won like everything in their lives. Like, I mean, technically, I guess if you think about it, Art won the most because he got the girl that he wanted, he was rich, and he's won all of these great tennis titles, and Patrick sleeping in his car, and Tashi didn't get to play at all because she was injured. So technically Art won, I guess, overall, but I really wanted Patrick to win, not because I liked him as a character more, but because I felt really bad for him that he was sleeping in his car and he didn't have any money in his bank account. even though I guess he is a trust fund baby and he could get money if he wanted to. Overall, I thought this movie was amazing. I liked it. I enjoyed it so much more than I thought I was going to. Even though other people in my life were hyping it up, I definitely am of the case that I definitely think that Tashi didn't love either of them. Like, girl, her love was tennis. She could care less about those two men. I do think that Art loved Tashi, and he had a lot of internalized homophobia, so he couldn't outwardly show his love to Patrick, but I think he did have love for Patrick. And I think it's the same for Patrick. I think Patrick did love Tashi in a sense, in the way that it was like looking in a mirror. And then he had always had love for Art. I don't think anyone was really truly the villain in this story. I think that they were all kind of like, meh. And it was very clear by the end of the movie that they all needed each other for different things. And they all had their roles within this dynamic. So yeah. Cheers to Challengers. I think I'm gonna see it again. I want to see it again, maybe this weekend, maybe next weekend. I would honestly give this movie like a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Like, it was great. Great.